On the Western Highway in Victoria, on a hot summer day, the holiday traffic and the transporters would barely notice the gathering of a small but elite band of sportsmen here to compete in an event which will attract world attention among other competitors in their chosen field. On the main route between Melbourne and Adelaide, the only reason for a stop here would normally be to quench a parched palate. In the old days, Cobb & Co. used this tiny hamlet near Ararat as a changing station for the horses. But for the next 9 days, it will be a hive of activity, and people for hundreds of kilometres around will know of the presence of a sport which flourished in the 70s and is booming in the 80s. It may seem a strange place to see many of the world's leading hang glider pilots in the middle of Western Victoria at Buangor near Ararat. But the field for the 1984 Australian Championships is indeed world class, because last year Australia won the teams competition at the World Championships in Germany, and Steve Moyes of Sydney took out the individual title. Australia's best from nearly every state are joined by pilots from West Germany, France, Great Britain, Sweden and Switzerland at a venue considered ideal for hang gliding because of 4 different mountains suitable for all wind directions, and the western plains which provide ideal thermals. The headquarters for the championships is the Buangor Hotel, and every sport should have a pub as its base.
Heat 11, Mark Barnfield, Tony Hughes, Bernie Beer, Rick Martin. Heat 12, Dave DeLay, Paul Murdoch, Max Stonham. Heat 13, Ian O'Neill, Claire Jarvis, Shane Duncan, lucky last, Steve Fowler.
50 pilots from 5 countries. In cross-country competitions, pilots are graded, so the best fly against the best. After the first couple of sorting out days, they are seeded into heats of 4, the top 4 in one heat, then the next 4, and so on. Aluminium frames, wire struts and Dacron sails can be awkward to handle on the ground, but take on a poetic beauty in flight. Australia is top dog of the world, and it's clear why the top overseas pilots have come to our national championship. British champion Bob Bailey.
To compete, to beat the Australians, so there's a lot of rivalry between the Australians and the British. We got beaten in Germany by the Australians, we lost our World Championship team trophy, so we're back here just to see if we can put the record straight.
This rivalry with the Australians, if you're battling with an opponent to get the same position in a thermal, does it get a bit willing up there?
Very. It gets very keen. You know, you're obviously pitting your wits against them, but everybody knows everybody and you're all fighting together, but it's just who can turn the tightest in the tightest core and climb the highest, gnashing teeth as we go, and fighting the eagles off here as well. We get eagles dive bombing you just to make it a bit more interesting.
Do they give you a bit of a clue as to where the thermals are?
Oh, yeah, they are. They're the best, you know. You see an eagle going up nearby, you get across to the eagle, and sure enough, the lift's very powerful. It's tremendous.
What are your feelings when you're just about to take off? I know you've had plenty of experience, but is it like facing the world's fastest bowler at cricket or something like that?
Yeah, it's something like that. The old adrenaline gets going, the heartbeat starts to race a bit. I'm very keen and thinking about what I'm going to be doing, so my mind's pretty well on, you know, where I'm going to be flying to first, because your first thermal is your most important thermal to get up and away to start, and then make your turn tight within the thermal. and climb away.
Britain also has the only woman competing. Claire Jarvis hails from Yorkshire and learned hang gliding while at college. This is her first competition. Well, Claire, it appears there's no chivalry in hang gliding. You have to set up the kite yourself.
That's right. Every now and again, when I get stuck in the bushes or I'm in real trouble, someone will come. But generally, the opinion is if you can't carry your own glider and you can't set it up, you can't fly it. So.
And these Australian Championships are your first competition?
Yes. I only managed to get in because I'm an international pilot, because in Australia you have to actually qualify through the state competitions to get in.
And you must have qualified just pretty well by now by coming out to Australia. And what are you spending, how much time in Australia just hang gliding?
Yeah, probably 2 or 3 months altogether. Some of the best hang gliding country in the world, Australia and California. California for the European summer, and this side of the hemisphere for our winter.
How are you going in the championship?
Not too bad, much better than I expected. I've won 2 heats and lost a few, but I'm not doing too badly. I thought I'd be nearly last, and I'm not. I'm gradually picking up. And you move up and down with the heats, sort of. I did well at the beginning and ended up flying some really hot pilots who hammered my score, but it all works out in the end.
A disappointment at the championship is the withdrawal of the world champion Steve Moyes of Sydney. He is the one they want to beat, and he's 6th at the halfway stage, but pulls out to return home.
I've won the Buffalo competition this year and the World Championships, and we've got to prepare for a lot of people coming over from America next week.
Surely an Australian Championship's worth winning, especially when you're halfway through it.
Yeah, well, it's the first time I've ever dropped out of a meet, but there's a lot of important things to do at home.
I mean, you've probably spent most of your time whizzing around the world, eh?
Yeah, the last 6 months we've been travelling, you know. I've flown in 22 different countries now, and every place is good for hang gliding.
When you're out in a competition, how do you look for thermals? I mean, you are actually in search of something that can't be seen.
That's right. You've got to be able to visualise that air is a fluid and that it does flow around objects and over objects, and also that it heats up in different coloured fields. You get black fields and they produce thermals, and you get rock faces, they produce thermals, and it's just a matter of trial and error for experience. A good ground speed for us to travel cross country is 20 miles an hour, and this year a guy did 221 miles and it took him 10 hours. So he averaged 20 miles an hour for 10 hours.
And that's including getting into the thermals and finding more altitude?
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine you could go faster across the ground, but that you'd be losing too much height.
Right, and if there's a bit of wind, it helps, it assists you in covering ground also. And when there's no wind, we run triangular courses, which is nicer because you end up at the place where you started off and you don't have to drive for 3 hours to get back home. There's 10 or 15 cars out there right now with CB radios, and all the pilots have CB radios, and they're trying to get their ground crews to go along the right road that they're flying along. And
Not too bad. Bloody wind picked up there at the finish. Yeah, it looks a bit strong, doesn't it? Yeah, it is. Powering when I come in to land here. Yeah.
Landing is inevitable. You just hope the end of a flight comes near home or within reach of your ground crew. Some will not be back to base until the early hours of the morning, but they'll all say it's worth it for the feeling of free flight. Again, world champion Steve Moyes.
when you take off, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what sort of day it is. When you hit your first thermal, you get an indication as to the strength of the day, the type of lift you expect, and you start thinking of how high you can get. The higher you can get, the further you can go. So you're just there on your own, and you have wings. You feel like you have wings, and you have no fear of altitude. Actually, the higher you are, the better you feel, because you feel like you can go further, and you have no limits, and that you can fly anywhere you want.
In competition, the task each day is to beat the 3 other pilots in your heat. Having launched almost together, they will wait for the best conditions, sometimes hours, before setting off. The best lift is in mid-afternoon when the Earth's heat is at its peak. Based on weather conditions, the task could be a triangular course, out and back, out to a goal, or out to infinity. A day which started with the 9 a.m. briefing could finish at dusk, hundreds of kilometres from home. Englishman John Pendry is one of the few sponsored pilots. The Flying Peanut holds the official world distance record of just on 300 kilometres, set in California in 1983. There is a limit to the hours of flight in a day, but the limit to distance will be determined by the development of the glider's performance. Not surprisingly, hang gliding has had its deaths and serious injuries. But due to steady improvements in design and construction, it's no longer seat-of-the-pants flying. Professional instruction is available to the beginner, but at this level, pilots have graduated through skill barriers. One of the Australian pioneers, Ian Jarman.
It's been developed over a number of years, the safety aspect, and the sport's really come of age as a result of that. And we've gained a lot more acceptance from the Department of Aviation as a result as well.
It started off with deaths and having a reputation for being a bit of a madman sport, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's taken us a long time to get out of that image too. The safety record has improved out of sight with the advent of professional instruction, certification on gliders, and just a lot more knowledge on the part of the pilots.
How does somebody get into it? Obviously, you've got to walk before you can run and stumble a bit before you can fly.
Right. You have to take some basic instruction. In the last couple of years, the Department of Aviation asked us to develop a training program, which meant that anyone getting into the sport had to do at least 3 days basic instruction. And then from there, you can take further instruction or, with the help of a club, continue on.
What, your first flight might be just running along, hopping in the air and going 10 feet or something?
Yeah, well, you start pretty well on flat ground. As you gain the takeoff and landing skills, which are the most difficult, then you progress upwards, greater altitude, and, you know, more and more skills.
So then once you've got the skills to turn it, take off and land, it's a very different thing to be able to read thermals and be able to compete in cross-country, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the next aspect of the physical control of the glider isn't all that difficult. Not much more than, say, controlling a car. But understanding the way that air behaves, that's the next big step. And that's where cross-country flying is the great challenge. You know?
And the takeoff point can be a great challenge too. It's an adventurer's life. Standard transport for the hang gliding fraternity is a four-wheel drive. Stacked high with kites and good friends, these rock hoppers have to negotiate some rough country roads and climb some precipitous tracks. Even then, the final climb will usually be on foot with a 6-metre long pack on the shoulder. The conversation might drift to past glorious days, the opposition to beat today, new ways of setting up the glider. At the occasional dip in the track, a groan might be heard. Sink. Height and more height, ever onwards to the top. The elevation, so painstakingly gained, can so quickly be lost on a day of sink. Like surfers chasing the magic wave, these birdmen are hoping for lifting air and circling in a thermal to 6,000 or 8,000 feet. What sort of a day will it be? A glance at the wind and the trees. We don't want it too strong. But all the while, even before getting airborne, a chance to take in the surroundings. Hang gliders see nature at its best. What a view. You don't have to be up in the air to feel as though you're in close company with the gods. This is just such a superb location for competition hang gliding. Only really developed 3 years ago with the assistance of the Forestry Commission, already the Australian Championships have been held here twice. And this year, competition's been held on 7 successive days, which is unusual. And the reason for that is that there are alternative venues here within the one spot, depending on the wind direction. Around left, we have Ben Nevis, which operates in westerlies and northerlies. A little bit further around to the right and just over the back, out of sight, is Bald Hill near Elmhurst, and that operates in sou'easters and stronger winds. And then around to Mount Buangor, which operates in southerlies. Well, we're at Langigaran today, which operates in easterlies, and we have an easterly breeze hitting the face of this rock and really ripping up the face. And that gives the competitive gliders the lift they need to take off. And it's a superb natural rock here which gives them the takeoff point. The task today in the easterly is to get the elevation off the rock here, and they're going over the back about 130 kilometres towards Coleraine near the South Australian border. Before competition begins, test pilots take off to report on the conditions. Experienced flyers themselves, they're called wind dummies. Today it's blowing hard and the wind dummies are taking a real buffeting. The contenders for the championship will be watching closely. Will we get off today?
Well, a long time ago, came a man on a track, walking 30 miles with a sack on his back. And he put down his load where he thought it was the best, made a home in the wilderness. Built a cabin and a winter store, and he plowed up the ground by the cold lake shore. The other travelers came walking down the track, and they never went further, no, they never went back. Then came the churches, then came the schools, then came the lawyers, then came the roads, then came the trains and the trucks with their load, and the dirty old tram. It was the telegraph road.
Okay, quiet please. Right, as we can see, it's blowing a southeasterly down below and a northeasterly up high with the clouds. Our wind dummies aren't getting very high at the moment, so we're going to be waiting before we send the first heat off. All right, so that's what's happening so far. The first and second heats, if they could make sure that they're ready to go off within a few minutes' notice. We'll also be, as I say, waiting to see what's happening with the wind. If there is a change in task, we'll be having another pilot's briefing.
Looking like a tent city perched on top of the most exposed camping site imaginable, they wait. It's the first bad day for a week. Like parachutists between jumps, the waiting breeds comradeship. In fact, they're set up like parachutists, without the plane to jump out of.
Bag here, and it is pulled out like this, and this is a handle. It has a bag like that, as you can see. It has a bridle attachment that comes to your carabiner, which your harness does hang off, which holds you in the glider. And it opens up like that, and you throw the parachute out if you ever do need it. There's only been probably 5 parachute deployments in Australia, but it's handy to have if you do happen to ever need it.
Yeah. So I reckon it's just a bit like a life jacket in a boat, Russell, just there, just in case.
Yeah, that's right.
Principally, I think glider designs are a lot better, and the pilot's attitude to the sport is a lot better now than it was earlier. We know a lot more about it, and we've got a better training, system. The rating scheme here has improved it a hell of a lot. People are more aware of what is happening,
In the earlier days, people never used to know whether gliders were strong enough or not, but now they go through the certification program that, says, okay, this glider is certified and it can be sold here in Australia or Britain or wherever you go. They do have a certification program, which makes it great now.
The locals are used to windy launching pads and fields as far as the eye can see. But it's quite a different story for many of the overseas visitors. Stefan Eilert from Germany.
Well, where we fly, it's more mountain area, exclusive mountain area. We fly most of the time. We fly in the Alps. We don't leave the mountains to go into the flatlands like here. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why the Australians won the World Championships.
So what was your impression of Australia when you arrived here and saw the sort of land that we've got here?
Well, first the impression was, we went from Sydney to Stanwell Park. That was the first impression, having a beautiful soaring site we don't have in Germany. That soaring site, you take off, fly around, have an easy time in the air, you go like that, and just enjoy yourself. You land on the top, have a Coke or something like that, and then you take off again. Well, then we came here, and it was rather rough. The thermals are very rough, and especially me, I had to get used to that. Rough conditions, and but after a while you get used to that. Especially thermals are so strong that my barrier is not big enough to get the whole rate. Yeah.
Will you go back to Germany a better pilot than you were?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's good for learning flying in rough conditions. Especially the 2 days ago when we were 30 pilots in the air, very rough conditions. Was quite interesting, but sometimes scary.
Meanwhile, on top of the mountain, it's getting scary today, and the only competitor to get off swoops dangerously close to the trees. With the wind gusting and swirling up the mountain face, conditions have become dangerous and flying is out for the day. It's 4 o'clock and all the climbing and setting up and waiting have been for nothing.
What about the turbulence?
Yeah,
taking off?
They're bouncing around there. Oh, that's 25. 10. Nah, won't do it.
The takeoff's a bit tricky here, isn't it, with all these pretty tall trees and the sheer edge, getting those rotors off the trees, just making it a bit tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little unfortunate that weather's turned bad on us today, but it's just a part of hang gliding in general. I think that for all the years most of the guys have been flying, that you can drive 100 miles to go to a favourite site and think the weather's going to be good. You can sit on the mountain all day, like we're doing today, and not fly because of adverse conditions.
You will fly in conditions that do it, possibly are adverse, but that's part of it all. We are so dependent on the conditions, you know.
But the conditions are getting worse now, so I'd say we'll start packing up and call it a day and go back to the pub for a beer.
Hang on, hang on. I'll do another.
So it's not like a day of late finishes in faraway places. The cancellation means an early start to the revelry. Sportsmen from 5 countries with a common interest making friendships that will last forever. This is why all sports should have a pub as headquarters.
Me and Joe and Oliver in the drugstore killing time when my eyes came across this magazine. I got to reading me an article on skydiving and parachuting, said jumping out of airplanes was the thing. Now being raised down on a farm and always looking for adventure, I knew that I could figure out a way. Dan McGill's got a parachute and Uncle Harvey owns an airplane, so call the boys together, today's the day. I found out too late what Uncle Harvey called an airplane. Why, it was nothing but an engine and the wing. And I could feel my fear rising as Delmer watched me pack the parachute, as he kept saying I was doing the right thing. Dan shook me by the hand as he strapped me in the harness. Virgil bought a jug and passed it around. I took one look at that airplane, that whiskey and that parachute, and I turned the bottle up and I drank it down. I was drunker than Hooter Jones when they poured me on the airplane. The engine coughed and we headed for the clouds. But I was sober as a judge when Harvey opened up the door. I never knew my heart to beat so loud. I said, Harvey, I can't do it, as he kicked me out the door. But my hands wrapped around the landing gear. I was hanging on real good till Dan stepped on me fingers, and Virgil heard me scream way down there. Thank the Lord and Dan McGill, when that parachute finally opened, I said, hell, there ain't no need to be afraid. I went crashing through the henhouse, scattering chickens, breaking eggs. Then I kissed the ground and I fainted clean away. Now, folks, I've done some fighting. I've been shot at once or twice, and I've done been run over by a train. But I never can remember a time I was never more afraid than the day I jumped from Uncle Harvey's plane.
I can do it again.
But some are here for more serious pursuits. Members of the British team, the dethroned world champions, are here to beat the new champions, Australia. The locals can claim the official title as cross-country champions, but the official open distance record holder is John Pendry, with his amazing flight of 300 kilometres in America.
I went to 18,000 feet that day. I could have gone higher, the thermals were going higher than that, but I hadn't got oxygen, and you know, really that's about as high as you can go without oxygen.
And how long would it have taken you?
It took 8 hours, almost exactly 8 hours.
That's a lot of flying.
Yeah, it is. It sounds a long time, but when you're actually doing it, it sort of passes very quickly and you don't really notice the time. Yeah, you're so absorbed in what you're doing, and it was such a good day that it was enjoyable for 8 hours.
And is it hard work, you know, running out of one thermal and thinking, well, I've got to find the next one?
Sometimes it is, but that day, it's like all long flights, that everything sort of clicks into place. And it wasn't that hard work that day. Just everything went right. You got the next thermal just when you wanted to. And everything went really well. It wasn't that hard.
Well, world records are going in all sorts of sports all the time. Well, 186 miles sounds unbelievable to me, but is there a limit?
Yeah, there's a limit, but we haven't reached it yet. The limit is dependent on glider performance as well, and glider performance is still increasing. I don't think we've reached the limit of distance as far as gliders that we've got at the moment are concerned. So I think we can still fly further with the gliders we've got, and when glider performance increases again, we'll fly even further. It's getting to be too far to be worthwhile doing now. This competition in particular has sort of started to change away from just flying open distance, and we're more into flying to goals and trying to do triangles and that sort of thing, which is the way that it's going to go over the next few years, I'm sure.
Well, you've seen America, and of course that's pretty vast, but what was it like when you came to Australia and saw the vastness of this place and the type of conditions that we have?
I don't think you really realise the vastness till you get out. When you're flying out away from here and you get out into the real flatlands and you're at sort of 6,000 feet or something, and all you can see is just flat land stretching as far as you can see anywhere, then you start to realise just how big it is. It's a bit, I don't know, it's not been too bad here because there's plenty of farms around, but we were getting up towards Warracknabeal a couple of days ago, and so beyond there, it looks a bit remote, to say the least.
Would you have regarded this as a top competition to come to, with the Australians being reigning world champions?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Apart from the fact that they're world champions, they've just got a lot of very good pilots here. I was here last year, and I could see that then. And I can see why as well, with the sort of flying they get here. You know, they've got the place to improve their skills, and they're certainly doing that.
Alors les autres, ils sont partis d'ici, ils ont fait le triangle, ils sont allés vers là, ils sont...
Most of the visiting French party don't speak English. Imagine the difficulty in a foreign country listening to weather reports and the new day's task. Just a dose of Australian place names would be enough to confuse a stranger, let alone local conditions affecting weather patterns. And Buangor would hardly be familiar to regular travellers along the Western Highway. The town's oldest inhabitant is Reg White, who can go back nearly as far as the Cobb & Co days. It's come a full circle now with unpowered flight.
Oh, well, it's improved in the last few years. Well, this year they got water on that they've been trying for about 70, 80 years to get. They got the water on now at most of the places.
Was there any one thing that ever put Buangor on the map? Is it famous for anything, or have the hang gliders made it famous?
Well, that's about all that has made it in the last couple of years, yeah. There was nothing, nothing much beyond that. They used to have a football team, and then all the young ones seemed to get away to the towns.
You still get down to the pub for a beer 4 or 5 days a week?
And it's a good place to come down for a couple of hours. And I've only been coming down for 62 years.
The task will be along the lines of a turn point, then open distance. The turn point will be a good way, like pretty close to Swan Hill, or like that sort of distance. So we're heading for big ones. It's a good day, and maybe some of the guys who want to do some large distances can get it. The task is turn point at Motoa, open distance from there. Nigel. Yep, it's a photographic turn point. If you've got maps there, you found Motoa. The turn point is defined quite well. It's the Wimmera Highway and the road to Munyip. Now those two roads also provide the quadrant in which you must be in to take the photo. Okay.
With the world champion out, the leader of the Australian Championship is Danny Scott of Sydney. Well, what would it mean to you to be champion?
Oh, everything. I've been flying for 9 years. I'd love to take out the nationals. It'd be great. It's probably the best thing that could happen to me.
So does that make you feel during these championships a bit more tense than you normally would be?
No, I'm not as tense as normally. I've sort of got over being tense. It's just one of the things that you learn over the years, that you never get tense.
But you can just look ahead to a few days' time when you might be Australian champion and think, well, that's what I've always wanted.
You've earned it, yeah.
How hard is it to win at this level with guys from overseas?
Well, they're about the only top competitors that I've come up against, really. The John Pendry and Bob Bailey. Been flying them for a couple of days now. Looks like I'll be flying them throughout the comp, because they're right up there.
And when we leave you and you've got a minute to go, what will you be thinking?
Find the first thermal. Just got to get the first thermal. Get up as high as you can. And just wait for someone to make a move.
It won't be you? You wait?
Well, possibly. If I get up higher, then I'm at first. I'll make the first move. But it doesn't work till, like, it's 10 to 4 now. It probably won't work until 5.
So you're just going to use up time?
Conditions won't get good until 5.
So you just stay in the area, use up time, and then go for it?
Be calm.
Down the telegraph road.
Overall leader after 7 days is Englishman John Pendry, who has been matched against Danny Scott in each heat since day 3.
Getting up nice and high now. Looking back at launch, looks a long way away. Incredible view. Grampians off there to the west. Spectacular range. the dams around. It's incredibly flat out here with just these lumps of mountains sticking up out of the flat plains. Not sure how far we'll get. Probably only got an hour of thermal time left. Probably get another 40 kilometres with this wind, I'd say. Getting down really low now. Only 1,000 feet off the ground, I know. Where's my opponents above me? I know I'm going to get beaten here if I don't get something really soon. Just keep flying, maximum efficiency now. Got to just keep going, keep in the air. Where's a good thermal source? There we are. Coming up on one now. Maybe there'll be something here. Here we go. Yeah, it's a good one. Great. Getting late in the day now, the sun getting really low. Light getting a bit dim, lift getting a bit low now. Looks like it's going to be the last thermal here. Yeah, no more lift. Gonna have to land.
It turns out to be the last day of competition. The weather, so good for a week straight, has turned sour. The requirements have been met, a variety of winds to test all-round ability and sufficient flying to decide the champions. And you guessed it, the crowded lounge of the pub is where the spoils are presented.
First place in the Australian International Cup. It's won by John Pendry.
Thanks very much to everybody here. Enjoyed it. It's been a great competition. Thanks very much.
First place and Australian national hang gliding champion, Danny Scott.
So the guy more at home on the wing than in the spotlight beats all but the world record holder for his first national title. Well, you were nervous up on the hill a couple of days ago, but now it's official Australian champion. What's it feel like?
Feels great. Couldn't be happier.
And you have been working at this for a long time?
Yeah, 9 years. Started when I was 13. It's been a while.
Well, congratulations. After 9 years of trying, well done.
And someone yelled out thermal, and the hunted for the core. We was hooked in there for hours until our arms came bloody sore. And Moisey kicked himself the day, Sky Trek reach the moon. God help me, I was only hang to.
For years, people have been ranting and raving about man's dream to fly. Well, that just doesn't stand up anymore. Nowadays, we've got so good at it that we can dream of flying and we can be James Bond all at the same time. The dream has become reality.
I'm here for the fun, for friends, for the ambience. You can say that? Atmosphere.
Is it good atmosphere here?
Yes, yes. You don't feel that?
I do, yeah.
Came across some border town, couldn't find my way back home.
There's this place in France called Saint-Hilaire. It's a pretty groovy place for flying, and once a year, the town opens up its doors and its cliffs to flying freaks from all over Europe. People turn up, fly, chat, fly, walk the dog, dress up in crazy costumes and, well, fly, basically. Yeah.
It's such a famous place for practicing paragliding or hang gliding because the air conditions are really good.
We have a big cliff and we have good condition to get home. We are at 1,000 meters high, so during the winter it's possible to continue to fly here.
Usually people are saying when you're not flying anymore in Saint-Hilaire, you're not flying anywhere else.
How long is it gonna take? Get your thinking straight. Once the lines are drawn, oh come on.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot to tell you about the film festival.
When we start this festival, there's a lot of people who start to think, oh, why not? It's a good idea to produce this kind of movie.
Following this festival, we have the Icarus Cut.
You must have heard about this guy Icarus, who flew too close to the sun and his feathers fell off. Remember that? Well, for the last 19 years, they've been holding an event in memory of him. It's called the Icarus Cup. It's a chance for pilots to let their hair down and slip into something more comfortable. Now, you wouldn't believe the things that go on here. And each year, it just seems to get more and more wild. This year, they're attempting to launch some of the wildest flying machines ever, from 40-meter dragons to yellow submarines. The question isn't why, it's why not.
The only thing missing?
All those mythological years ago, that didn't put a stop to the notion of flying. It may have taken some time, but in the 1970s, a bunch of budding aviators took up right where he left off. And generally with about as much success.
The first time, it was 20 years ago. We fly from the top of the mountain to this place here. And every landing was a crash.
The beginnings were were a bit wild. The first hang gliders were very fragile and could break very easily.
Have you broken anything?
Yes, just...
Okay, it may look a bit risky, but in those early days, valuable lessons were learned.
I was afraid when I fly, but I like to be afraid. I like it because I like dangerous sports.
Welcome. Right, here we are. For the first time at the Icarus Cup, a flying dog. He's running down the platform. Is he going to make it? Fantastic.
Well, I suppose that most sports must have had their own pioneers, just to get the ball rolling.
At the beginning of hang gliding, the accidents were due to the lack of tuition of the pilots. Then the movement structured itself and people got proper courses and the accident rate lowered. Approximately the same thing happened with paragliding.
The Free Flight School at Saint-Hilaire has taken the pain out of the process of learning how to fly. How many flights have you made?
5.
To paraglide, it's my life.
French Federation try very early to have school method to learn and to be efficient. And since now, I think 10 years, there's good school and there's good machine.
In hang gliding, the gliders are very safe now. They have been for some time, many years. Paragliding is a different story. There's still quite large steps being made in performance and especially safety. Because safety has improved a lot in the last couple of years.
The new machines of today are safer and designed to fly further and faster.
There seems always to be a tendency towards sophistication. So I don't know, perhaps somebody in his garage has a machine of the next year.
In a shed in Saint-Hilaire, Alain Jacques has been working on his new flying machine. If the radical design works, it could be a breakthrough for hang gliding. But he won't know until he's taken it for its first test flight.
Do you think this is going to fly?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I hope so. That will not really fly, but run and fly 2 meters, 5 meters, and so on. I will try with 1 or 2 parachutes above a lake, and just in case.
Is this revolutionary new aircraft called the Swift. It is what's known as a foot-launched sailplane. This machine is state-of-the-art. Basically, if you want to fly a glider, you don't need a tow from an airplane anymore. It's ecological, so we like it.
Fans in the crowd, we have flying for you today, a yellow submarine. Will it get up in the air?
If you've been waiting to see dogs that fly, trains soaring, and dragons flirting with clouds, well, now's the time.
Voilà les amis, on a amené les serpents là pour voler là. Many people have the feel of the flight. It's fantastic for that.
Can you tell me about your train?
My name?
Your train.
And now at the takeoff site, we have the man dressed and disguised as a cannon. But no, the wind is taking him. No, he's hitting the barrier. Now we have the dog getting airborne. This dog, of course, this is a man and the dog, but also later in the show we have a real dog getting airborne. One more time. His second attempt. He is in the air. We now have a flying dog, but don't worry. Behind him is a guy who is working his controls by remote control. Uh-oh, accident. Oh, the submarine! No, stop before the edge before you drop off. We've got just about everything in the air and plenty of people watching. Gorillas, bananas, and what's the time? Oh, the dog is landing. He's safe landing for the dog down below. And the helicopter too, safe touchdown. Up in the air, flying high above, we have gorillas, bicycles, oh, Mano's onion. And now it's time for the high-five express train. Second time now to try and take off. He's come to the edge. Oh, yes, he's flying. The train has got airborne. This is a one-way ticket. The gorilla touches down below, but up above it is a train. But now, the feat that everybody has been waiting for, it is Philippe Bernard and, of course, the flying dragon. This machine has flown only one time before in Verbier, but the wheel needs to be just right to be able to get up in the air. No, not this time. They must push the machine back up the hill and try again. Here she goes now, third time, lucky. Big push, running to the edge. Yes, she flies. She's up in the air, 45-meter tail. Fantastic.
Sensational, ain't it?